Keep on dreaming.
すべてを
Subitio. Kokoro. Until my heart extends. This one's nice. What else? Okay. I think we should check this one out. This one's cool. Oh, yeah. There's a crack. Oh yeah. That's not a crack. That's a border. Tonight is very clear. Sing to it all regrets. Can I change the color from here? Oh, yeah, I can. Ooh, that's nice. Oh. No, I can't. I can't change the color. How about this one? Oh, yeah, definitely we can change the color. It's gonna be... No. Black will do. Should be a red one. And this should be that. Yep, that. Yeah, that's fine. Kamehameha! Nope. 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 No. Nope. Yeah, I guess that should be fine. That is very clear. Seem to it all regrets. Should. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, this one's nice, but it's too bad it's for sale. That should be it. Said I love you, but I lied.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7.
Is it?
Katarina Alves. New challenger.
Oh, that's nice.
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
It's a late night streaming. Oh crap. That's fine.
We got the Steve.
Hold on, baby, hold on. Got to go home now. This feeling's so strong. Hold on, baby, hold on.
Desculpa,
It's a
mas você vai
burning
ter que morrer.
desire.
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight.
Oh, I missed that. Forgot this.
Round 3. Fight.
Oh wow! I didn't do that.
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Oh. I hate that. Instead of blocking. Oh. Oh, what the heck?
KO.
Why am I...
Final round.
Why am I jumping backward? Ah.
KO.
I forgot to...
You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Should have warmed up myself out first before taking the match.
Get ready for the next battle.
I'm not sure if my voice is loud enough. Alright.
Desculpa, mas você vai ter que...
I'm gonna get you, Steve.
Round one. Fight.
The damage. Oh, no, no. That one.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Oh, fudge. Oh, man.
Great. Round three. Fight.
Moha. Moha. I'm dead.
KO. Round four.
Moha.
Fight. Great.
Can't believe we still won that game.
Fight.
Counter hit.
KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
That's the only juggles that I know for now. I think that's the simplest juggles for Katarina. So that's fine. As long as we win.
Round one.
Oh, crap.
Fight. KO.
Mm.
Round 2. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, you're dead. Ah!
KO.
Double KO.
Round 3. Fight.
Yeah.
Ah! Nice attempt.
Yeah.
KO.
Nice attempt for the wall
Corre
juggles.
de volta pra sua mamãe.
Get ready for the next battle.
We are one. So set the world on. We can brighter than the sun. Whoa, whoa.
Desculpa, mas você vai ter que morrer.
Round 1. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, well, nope.
Yeah.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Yeah.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
KO. Final round.
It's the final round now.
Fight.
Okay, he doesn't want me to promote. Promote it. Ooh, I'm dead.
Great.
Hey you, you want to try me, Gov?
Get ready for the next battle.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar sua bunda até o inferno.
Round one. Fight. Shoot. 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 Shoot.
Oh, he's in the promotion.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Yeah.
KO. Round three. Fight. KO. You lose.
He got promoted.
Get ready for the next battle.
Let's just share.
Vamos lá.
Vamos.
Chutar sua bunda até o inferno.
Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight.
At least he doesn't know how to do it.
KO. Round three. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle.
I lost 2 times in a row. Okay.
Round one. Fight.
No, we know that. You can't use that anymore.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Not counter hit. Nope. What am I doing? What am I doing? Oh.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Ah, shit. Can't follow up. More hat. How's the wall combo?
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Yeah. More hat. Dead. I'm dead.
KO. Final round.
Final round.
Fight. KO.
That should
You win.
Você tem técnica.
that should have a follow up.
Get ready for the next battle.
I just don't know yet. I just don't know how to.
Desculpa, mas você vai ter que morrer.
Round 1. Fight.
No.
Yeah.
No.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
I missed again.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
That should be it.
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Nope.
KO. Final round.
Sometimes I give myself their creeps. Oh, what the heck? What am I doing? What am I doing?
You lose.
Hey, you. You want to try me, Gov?
Get ready for the next battle.
Oculus.
Vamos lá.
Vamos lá.
Eu vou chutar sua bunda até o
Round 1. Fight.
Yeah.
That damage. More hat.
Yeah.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Nope.
KO.
Bad habit.
Round 3. Fight.
No, bad habit.
KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight.
More hat. Ooh, why am I jumping?
KO. You lose.
Hey, you. You want to try me, Gov?
Get ready for the next battle.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar.
Round 1. Fight.
Look at that. Half of it.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Ah! What the heck?
KO.
Why am I having broken strings?
Fight.
bad habit.
You lose. Get ready for the next battle.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar sua bunda até o inferno.
Round 1. Fight.
What the heck? Ah, Daddy didn't finish it. Nope.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Yeah.
No. Wrong button. Ah ha ha ha. What am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I having broken
Round
strings?
3. Fight.
Moha.
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Broken strings. Ooh.
Vem aqui.
He's dead.
Yeah. Morra.
Great.
Moha.
Final round. Fight.
Yeah.
Ah.
KO. You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Get ready for the next battle.
Ooh, what's this?
Desculpa, mas você vai ter que morrer.
Round 1. Fight.
Ah.
KO. Round 2.
All right.
Fight.
Moha. Man, why am I attacking on Steve?
Round 4. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
KO. You win.
Got lots of bad combos.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1.
2 wins.
Yeah.
That hurts. Feeling good.
Yeah.
KO. Round 2.
I don't know what I'm doing. Bad.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Yeah.
KO. Get ready for the next battle.
Vamos lá. Eu vou.
Round 1.
Let's get it on.
Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle.
Desculpa, mas você...
Round 1.
Alright.
Fight.
Yeah!
KO.
You
Round
really
2.
can't defeat that stream spoken. Crap. Ah!
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Ooh. Ooh.
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Nah. Ah.
KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next
Yeah. Good job.
I'm making a castle.
Good job.
Desculpa, mas você vai ter que morrer.
Round 1. Fight.
Yes!
Great. Round 2. Fight. KO.
Why I'm not kicking?
Round 3. Fight.
Oh! Eh.
KO.
So much unnecessary movement. That cost your life.
Get ready for the next battle.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar sua boca.
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round
Attack
2.
and attack and attack and attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
KO. Round 3. Fight. KO.
It's
Round
gonna
4.
break.
Fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
KO. You lose.
Hey, you. You want to try me, Gov?
Nothing.
Get ready for the next battle.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar sua bunda até o inferno.
Round 1. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Why am I doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah. Yeah.
KO. Round
Yeah.
3. Fight.
What? What do you mean? What? Published. You just have to start it.
You lose.
Escape, then start. yellow one.
This one?
Yeah. Did you do anything? Click it. My island.
My iron.
Yeah. Start game. That's it.
Vamos
It's
lá.
already published.
Eu vou chutar sua bunda.
Round one. Fight.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
KO.
Why am I jumping?
Round two.
I don't know why am I jumping.
Fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
KO. Round three.
Click.
Fight.
That's the time when you click the wrong button. Oh, that's it. Hmm? Oh, there. You can exit from your island.
Yeah. Yeah.
KO.
Are you done?
Round four.
You did? Okay.
Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
KO. You lose.
Hey, you. You want to try me, Gov?
You did it?
Get ready for the next battle.
Yeah, just try it.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar sua
Start
bunda
game,
até o
the yellow
inferno.
one.
Round one. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
KO.
It's still loading.
Fight.
Yeah.
Oh, the heck?
KO. Round three.
Why it's not working?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah. Yeah.
KO.
He knows my
Round
launcher.
four.
He knows my launcher.
Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Ha.
promote himself.
KO.
Yeah.
You lose.
Hey, you.
You doing good?
You want to try me, Gov?
Yeah. What happened?
What happened to his face? Daddy?
Yeah.
What happened to the spider's face? It looks crazy.
Oh, he's a gun.
New challenger.
Nah. Oh, okay. Oh. Oh.
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
No. Oh man, Dragunov. I hate Dragunov.
Round one. Fight.
Ah.
KO.
Seems like there's something wrong.
Round two.
Why I can't do it?
Great. Round three. Fight.
Ah man, what's up?
Yeah.
KO.
What's happening? Why am I
Round
controlling?
four.
Control so
Fight.
wrong.
KO. Final round.
Can't
Fight.
accept.
Yeah.
Ah. Why?
Vem aqui. Yeah.
That won't kill him though.
Morra.
KO. You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Get ready for the next battle.
Desculpa, mas você vai.
Round 1. Fight.
Broken wall.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Oh, what the heck?
KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. You lose. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
I see the spider moving.
Yeah.
Daddy, it's not crawling.
Yeah.
Round 1. Fight.
I like this stage.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
No! No, he missed it.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Durian. Wow!
KO.
The pressure!
Round 4. Fight.
Ooh. Oh yeah, I can't do that. What the heck?
Great. You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
I can't just let myself be moving, don't
Ready
we?
for the next battle.
Akuma Matata. Akuma Matata. Akuna Matata.
Round 1.
Eclipse.
Fight.
No! No. Ooh. No. Nope. Ah!
Vem aqui.
Great. Round 2.
That's fine.
Fight.
What the heck?
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Ah!
KO. Round 4. Fight.
No! Nope, nope, nope. No. Ooh, la la.
KO. Final round.
So
Fight.
Ooh. Now.
You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1.
Okay,
Fight. KO.
you forgot about that
Round
launcher.
Fight.
Oh. Oh. Go. Why was I jumping? No.
KO. Round 3.
More.
Fight.
Wrong side. I'm dead. Ooh la la.
Round 4.
Round 4. Nope. Nope. No.
KO.
KO.
Final round. Fight.
Nope.
You lose. Get ready for the next battle.
Desculpa, mas você vai ter que morrer.
Round 1.
What are you doing?
Fight. KO.
It's a different kind of maps. It's just all maps. Nope. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's the game map. No. It's the game map. It's the default map. Yep.
KO.
Yeah.
Round 3.
You can definitely try it.
KO.
It
You win.
depends.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem
Somebody
alma.
might be there.
Get ready for the next battle.
That's okay. I think it's a training ground.
Oh.
Round 1. Fight.
Yeah.
No. 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 I told ya.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Ooh. Something you're doing. Oh, why did I jump?
KO. Round 3.
We can't let him win.
Fight.
No. No. Damn. No. Ooh.
KO.
Why? What happened?
4.
Driving a
Fight.
boat.
Ah. Ah.
KO. Final round. Fight.
Oh, what? No. Oh, he's winning. He's winning. No.
KO. You lose.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
Yeah, no one's here.
Okay. Ah, man, it's gone. Okay. Ah,
New
man.
challenger.
Yeah.
I'm so good.
Yeah.
North, east. Oh yeah, I have 999, yay. Whoa! I have a lot of them. Oh,
Ooh, see me too.
Daddy.
Round
That
one.
is a weird. Yeah.
Fight.
Oh, what the heck? Mm.
KO. Round two.
That's fine.
Fight.
What?
Perfect.
Have Fortnite.
Round three.
Who, me?
Fight.
No. Yeah. Why? Why?
KO. Round four.
Why some so
Fight.
broken strings? I have lots of buttons. No. That was a bit unfair.
You lose. Get ready for the next battle.
I should really sell this stick. What are you doing?
Round one. Fight.
What the heck is that? What the?
KO. Round two.
Hmm?
Fight.
How? Hmm. Yeah, that's fine.
KO. Round three. Fight.
Ooh.
me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one.
PhD in punishment.
Fight.
Right. Ooh. Ooh. That's fine. Ooh. Ooh, that's 3 hits.
Yeah. Vem aqui. Yeah. Yeah. Morra. Yeah.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Yeah. Morra. Yeah.
Oh, what the? Why?
KO. Round three. Fight.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Ha.
KO. Round four. Fight.
Nope. Sword. What?
Yeah. Morra.
Sword.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
Morra.
KO. Final round.
Final round.
Fight.
Ooh. Look at that. Just half of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle.
We're doing fine.
Round one. Fight.
No! I said that's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Yeah.
No, what the heck?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
KO. Round 3.
Kamehameha!
Fight.
Yeah. Ha.
No!
Yeah.
Eh,
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Yeah.
KO.
Yeah.
Round 4. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What the heck am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the heck? It's just so small.
Yeah.
KO. You win.
It's less rewarding.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
What the?
Yeah.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Ha. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
No. Ooh, that's so big. Ooh, what?
Yeah.
Ah. Ooh. Oop.
KO.
Yeah.
You win.
Like
Você está me dando
I
sono.
did it. I tried that like 3 times, and then
Get ready
he
for
was
the
just trying to
battle.
counter that move with that sword. It's kind of it's pretty hard to defeat something. I mean, someone that you don't know how to use it. And for me, I don't know how to use Yoshimitsu, so I'm having a hard time to defeat this guy. Honestly.
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
It doesn't matter. It's on the promotion. Oh man, it's.
Fight.
Ooh. Oh, what the heck? Woohoo! Ooh, that damage.
Great. Round 2.
Really hate this thing.
Fight.
What? What?
KO.
Dude,
Round 3.
he's on promotion.
Fight.
No. Feel my wrath.
Round 4. Fight.
Holy. Holy moly.
Vem aqui. Yeah. Yeah. Morra.
KO.
I'm not gonna let you promote.
Fight.
How the heck? Oh.
Corre de volta pra sua mamãe.
Come on, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. Oh, okay.
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
This guy again. Every day and every night, this feeling of fight. Try to survive, but I won't win. I surrender, I die. You are winning here, alright.
Getting old.
What the king know?
The balloon is still fine. Can pack. So I'm gonna blow up the balloon.
Round 1. Fight.
Yeah.
No!
KO.
Oh, it's my promotion! It's my
Round two.
promotion!
Fight.
I really hate that grab. Oh. I really hate that grab.
Round 3. Fight.
What the heck is that?
KO. Round 4.
I can see that he doesn't want. Oh, that. Ooh la la. What? No. Oh.
KO.
Why the heck?
You
It
lose.
didn't forward. Say goodbye to your promotion.
Get ready for the next battle.
Suddenly.
Okay, panigan na.
Mm-hmm. Every time you are near, just like
Round
me.
one.
Oh, is this promotion?
Fight.
What the heck?
KO. Round 2. Fight.
So, the unfairness of you.
Great.
I knew it.
Round 3. Fight.
You're the one who went
Ah, I really hate that grab.
hold this one and then
No! I forgot.
KO. Round 4. Fight. Perfect. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Of course you didn't let me promote. I wouldn't let you promote as well. Small.
Ooh.
Okay.
New challenger.
Oh, okay.
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
Means no worries for the rest of your days. It's a problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. Hakuna Matata. Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata. You said
So I'm the pig one.
Wait, I was saying Akuda Atata.
It means no worries by the rest of your days. It's all problem free
Round one.
philosophy. Why is so blacky? Okay.
KO. Round two.
That is so weird.
Fight.
Ah man, it's so. Ooh.
Ooh, no, I need that.
What the heck? It's so laggy.
Maybe Daddy, maybe there